Welcome to the R.O.A.R podcast show. This is John Smith, John Rattan, and I'm going to let this special guest introduce himself because he's running for state rep against Adam Stockford and Andrew Fink. And we spoke a couple of nights ago, and I found what you had to say pretty interesting. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Daren.
Well, thanks, John, and thanks to both of you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm Daren Wiseley. I'm running for state representative as a Republican here in the 58th District.
You and everybody else?
Well, most of them.
What he means by that is we get a lot of people that have R behind their name, and we question whether they should have the R behind their name or not. But everybody knows if you don't have an R behind your name, you're not going to get elected.
Yeah, it's totally the way it works in Hillsdale, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, that's this district. Others, you have to have the D. So, but that's a good point you bring up. There are a lot of what they call rhinos, Republicans in name only. But I'm a true conservative, and I will stick to those values.
Do you have a platform you'd like to put out?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. I'm the pro-life, pro-gun, pro-liberty candidate. I'm dedicated to support the Constitution, both of Michigan and the United States. And I'm a conservative, so I'm dedicated to protect the free market, cut back on regulations.
Well, that's very anti-Hamilton of you.
I was going to say, you sound like a real conservative here.
Yeah.
I mean,
You sound like a Madison man and not a Hamilton man.
Exactly, or Thomas Jefferson, my favorite founder.
My favorite one is Benjamin Franklin.
yeah, that's mine. He's the playboy, right?
Well, he was, if you look at all the people in the Constitutional Convention, all of them were in their 30s and 40s. He was the only one that was 80 years old.
80 years old, wow.
And if you look at that, he had the most experience, and he was also probably the only self-made man there among all of them. I mean, he was given up by his father at the age of 8 because he couldn't feed him anymore, and everything he did on his own.
My belly's starting to look like his.
Well, there you go. See, that's why.
What those platform ideas resonate obviously with John and myself. We're constitutionalists. We believe in individual rights, property rights, and that does all fall in line with that.
Well, I'm a strict constitutionalist, and a lot of times, and I've been told I've run for the same office a couple of times here in Hillsdale, and I was told that I was too conservative for Hillsdale, and that I was radical because I believed in the Constitution. So.
That was just a couple of nights ago.
Yeah, that's a hard one to kind of figure out.
John's too radical because I said, well, they were called radicals in 1776.
I guess I'm in good company.
Yeah. So, what made you run for state rep? We got 2 other state reps, and they're both conservative too, Daren. So, I mean, they got a similar platform as you do. I mean, they're both pro-life guys too, and gun right guys. I'm sure Andrew is. I don't know. I know Adam is. I don't know about Andrew as much, but I believe he's a pro-gun guy. What makes you any different from them?
Sure, John. Yeah, so, I mean, those guys are pretty conservative guys. I don't know, obviously, exactly where they stand on every issue. Why I decided to run is I feel like I'm in the best position to bring forward those values. What I mean by that is what's most important in a candidate, in my mind, is where you start from, the lens you view every issue from. And the first question I ask is this constitutional? Is this within the law allotted of government? And then from there, I'll go to, is it good policy or not? And my values will go toward that. But you have to start at that question. I think a lot of people don't. So that's one thing I will bring to the table. And also, I'm a lifelong resident of this district, so I understand our needs here. I understand what people want. And I think I understand how to help the place out.
Why don't you go on a little bit on the backstory for yourself?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, lifelong district resident. I went to Hillsdale High School. Played baseball there. That was my favorite sport growing up. Have a lot of good friends. They're still in the area. Then I went to college at Indiana Tech. I went for business. A lot of people think I'm an engineer or something because of the tech, but business major. Yeah. And that was in Fort Wayne. I worked full-time to put myself through school in retail. After that, I went to law school down at Indiana University down in Bloomington. 3 years down there. Made a lot of good friends there too. That city, it's kind of like an Ann Arbor for people who don't know.
With hills.
Yeah, with hills, a lot of hills. But what I mean by that
limestone.
is it's super liberal. So there's such a hardcore left-wing bias like there is at a lot of big state universities. It And that is really where a lot of my political views were shaped. Because on one hand, we're reading the Constitution, we're reading the law, and I saw how much power the Supreme Court has. They basically legislate from the bench. So I became a strong originalist there. But in terms of just politics, a lot of that by the institution pushing this, do you have an implicit bias? All this gender identity stuff. And it really made me question my values, where they came from, and that's where a lot of those were shaped.
So they were basically it was founded in the fire of liberalism, and you came out the other side as a conservative. That's, in my book, that's hard steel. So
Thanks.
Well, that's sort of like, I mean, I'm sort of the same ordeal. I don't have the same type of history, but I'm from Metro Detroit, and all my friends and their parents are all UAW workers.
Well, you grew up not knowing you were a conservative. You thought you were a liberal.
Well, yeah, right. I definitely believe that everybody's born a conservative. Like, you got to save your pennies.
See, I'm just the opposite. I believe that everybody, when they got out of school and then they have to start paying taxes, that's what makes them a conservative.
Well, we all
start getting stolen from.
I just think we're all born conservatives, and then for some reason we all have bleeding hearts and we want to see everybody do well. But the fact of the matter is, there will always be people that need help.
Well, see,
you can't fulfill. You
brought up something interesting there, and I get this a lot of the times, especially when I teach here at Liberty Hall. A lot of people go, "Well, conservatives, they don't care about people. They're evil. They don't care about people. We need to have welfare to take care of people." If they were to study their history and study the things that Madison wrote about, Madison actually said we do need to take care of widows and orphans and the people that can't take care of themselves. We need to do that. But his idea was we need to do it in a Republican-style government in which it's done on a local level,
sure,
where you can use the element of shame so that it keeps people from abusing the system, but yet we can still take care of those that need to be taken care of.
99% of the people are doing it. That 1% you can shame.
That's right. So when you take that and you put it to a federalist-style government, it's a faceless, nameless government that it's easy to...
Well, Jesus talks about this too.
Exactly.
You don't have to give money either. And that's another thing. So the idea of forcing me by gunpoint, literally, to take money for my taxes,
or the threat of the loss of my freedom,
right, to pay for, say, transportation for people in the community that may need a ride. I mean,
especially when we call it a voluntary tax system.
Yeah, it's not very voluntary.
Well, it is, but most people don't realize that they signed a contract when they signed that first IRS form.
Yeah, well,
it's contractually obligated at that point.
Quit talking sovereign citizen stuff, John.
That's not sovereign citizen. That's just the law.
But yeah, so you come back and you decide to run for state rep. I mean, like, who jumps into like a state race? I mean, that's a big race, man.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of money. I don't have a lot of that. It's a lot of work. I do have a very strong work ethic, so I'm willing to do that. But I just thought, with my values and what I bring to the table, I mean, this is supposed to be, and it is a strong conservative area. And along with being a lifelong resident, I thought it was time for myself to kind of step up and be a leader and fight for what's right, because seeing where the way things are headed, if we don't get the next generation of young leaders in there who have these values, because let's be honest, most of my classmates are Bernie Sanders socialists. So,
absolutely.
So I, it's easy to be conservative in Hillsdale County, but to go to a big state school, you're one of the few. So that's a lot of why I wanted to do it.
Yeah,
well, I think it's funny you say that, because yesterday at the Women's Republican meeting, I had that conversation with a couple people, and I was telling them, like, listen, you get to leave Hillsdale. It ain't like Hillsdale everywhere else. So, you better be expecting to get, I was telling them about the Lincoln Day dinner, John, about the Republican Lincoln Day dinner.
Okay.
That I'm trying to make it proud to be a Republican event, because you don't want to be proud to be a Republican, say, downriver.
Well, that goes back to the old theory. It's easy to be a Christian in church, right?
Right, exactly.
It's a little harder to be a Christian.
so like, you go to Waterford,
out away.
Go to Waterford in Oakland County, which used to be conservative, if you will, and I would say it's probably more liberal based now.
Mm-hmm.
And Oakland County probably has the most one of the larger counties in the state. I bet it's mostly liberals at this point. A lot of the conservatives probably moved on or moved out, and it's a lot more liberals are moving in.
Well, the other problem is, though, too, we've since everybody says the greatest generation. The problem was they went to Europe and fought, and they came home and stopped. there may be some truth to that, but a lot of it was the John Dewey model of and Madison talks about this in the bounty payments for cod fisheries debate of 1792.
You mean the crystal ball crystal ball?
Yeah, it was so prophetic what he talked about. He said, if you believe that this gives Congress any more power than what was given to them in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 through 17, he said it won't be long that they'll put schools in every county and parish, and they'll pull from the
Have you read this, Darren?
No.
Oh, you need to come to my class when I do that class.
Yeah.
You'll love it.
Okay.
Darren,
it's so prophetic.
It's a crystal ball.
It's so
it
prophetic.
Really is. It gives
he
me,
predicted everything that we're going
I got
through
chills
right now. Yeah.
thinking about it. That's how it's amazing.
But he said if you do that, you're going to have to create these schools so that you can indoctrinate the children so that they'll believe the same way that the government wants them to believe. And here we are. Hello.
He talks about roads. He talks about.
That's right.
He names off all the industries that we fund now.
And so John Dewey brought that to fruition. And the problem is my dad's generation, who was the greatest generation, my dad was World War II Navy, they believed in, you work hard, you do these things, you send your kids to school, they learn the reading, writing, arithmetic, they come home. The problem is they weren't paying attention because they were too busy building America back again, that they didn't realize that that's not what was being taught to us in those schools. Those schools were started no longer teaching people to think, so we don't have critical thinkers. They were teaching people what to think, not how to think. And this is the problem that we're in right now. And this is the reason why our universities are such hotbeds of liberalism and just absolute everything, just the opposite. They say they believe in free speech, but yet they keep anybody out that doesn't speak what they want to hear.
Yeah, and I have a great story. Now that you bring it up, is I couldn't agree with you more on the free speech issue. I mean, you're seeing on TV, the free speech zones put on a corner of campus where no one can see you do it, or else you could get arrested or in trouble with the institution. I mean, it was the same thing. I was in a group of students, a conservative, Turning Point USA, you probably heard of, and we wanted to have Ben Shapiro, and he's a big conservative speaker, activist.
Yeah, we're familiar.
Yeah, I know you guys are. I guess everyone watching this probably is.
Ben who?
But it's a real big
Ben
deal.
Stein?
Yeah. Ben Stein.
Anybody? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. So, but yeah, it was a big deal to have him, and I listened to him every day at that point. But the school basically made it so hard for him to come that we couldn't. And I feel like that's a clear First Amendment violation. And I know it's happening all across the country with these big state institutions.
Yeah, and it's hard to see, especially when I love this group called Antifa that stands for anti-fascists, and I haven't seen fascists like that since the brown shirts. But anyway.
Yeah, who was it that said the next generation of fascists will come in the name of anti-fascists?
Well, yeah. In fact, I can't. I know who you're saying. I can't quote it right now. But even Abraham Lincoln said that if the country's destroyed, it won't be destroyed from an outside enemy. It'll be destroyed from within. Yeah. And that's exactly what's going on. We bring destroyed from within.
And those big schools are paid for by state taxpaying dollars.
Exactly.
Which is ridiculous.
At the threat of me losing my liberty.
Yeah,
I have to pay for it.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Like U of M or state, and we have to pay, and we have to pay into that.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you follow the money, and that's who's in control, and that's why a place like Hillsdale College doesn't have that problem, because they're not tied down by the almighty dollar.
Well, I mean, they still are somewhat, but they're, especially President Roach, when he was there, he was a huge fundraiser. That man knew how to get people to bring money in, and he brought a lot of money into that college and really grew that college in the 70s. And so, yeah, it is good to see that we have a few shining lights like that, like Hillsdale College and like Northwood College, which I believe is even more conservative and more constitutional.
I was going to say more constitutional.
More constitutional than Hillsdale.
I'm not too familiar, so.
Yeah,
out of Midland.
They
push a more of a constitution. See, what John and I have noticed is the average conservative or regular conservatives, they're more concerned about social issues like gay marriages or pot or something of that nature,
where the government had no power given to them for that anyway.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like those issues are for us. Who gives a shit, right? So, but they're not so concerned about constitutional issues or founding father principles, and that's where.
Well, they are. And I'm going to get hate mail on this already, I know, but I'm going to say it. It's like those people that want to pull certain verses out of the Bible and use them, but they don't want to take the entire
The
word of God
context.
because just those things fit what they're doing that make it okay.
Sure.
Whereas if you take the whole word of God, you might not be sitting on the right side.
Yeah, Christians that don't know all the principles. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I say this all the time. You know, I can call myself a zebra, and I could go to the zoo every Sunday, but that doesn't really make me a zebra, does it? And so we see this a lot, and I'm not throwing stones at Christians or making fun of Christians. I'm making fun of everybody that is.
I mean, we're
hypocritical.
guilty of it. At one
We're
point
all
or another.
hypocritical animals, some more than others, but we see this a lot within the conservative side. People call themselves conservatives, but they're so hypocritical. They go, yeah, I believe in the Constitution, but just those parts that make me feel good, not all of it.
Well, it's like saying I'm a mechanic. I mean, I get it from everybody. You know, like you'll talk to someone. I'm a computer repairman too. I can build websites too. No, you can't, dude. Like, no, you can't. You know. So I get that a lot out there with conservatives is that it's a social thing. It's not principle thing, and they don't. There's a disconnect there, and it takes a long time to train someone. And then they're looking at John, like myself, like, oh, this convicted felon, 41-year-old broke guy is going to teach me the Constitution now. You know, like,
Yep.
you know, like he's got conservative values, you know, like principles, like, and
Yep,
that,
that's
you know,
why he's not a felon anymore.
right. So
Right?
like, and that's what you get out there. It's a very dynamic situation, I guess, if you will. It's a lot of fun.
It's just tough. I know it really shocked me in 2012 when I first ran, and I was like, you know, talking the Constitution, and people were like, "You're a radical."
So Daren, you're a radical at this point, you know.
I guess so.
Yeah, you and the rest of us.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's I was just tonight before you got here when we were doing some things. I had getting ready for my class Tuesday next week,
Okay.
and it's on the Petition of Right of 1628. And
whatever that is.
whatever that is. Well, there's 700 years of history that leads up to the Constitution
Sure.
and
You don't
5
have to keep going
genealogical
into it.
documents that actually get us there. And so if you don't know the history of that, you don't understand when our forefathers said, you know, we've got to preserve this liberty as our forefathers did. And everybody goes, well, who were that? Well, you know, you have to understand that history. And if you don't know where you came from, you have absolutely no clue where you are or where you're headed. So history is important.
Oh, certainly.
John Daren's running for state rep. What's his next game plan?
I
thought. Oh, go ahead, Daren.
Hey, I'm learning a lot from him. So
No, what's your game plan, man? So you got Coldwater to hit up. That's a liberal area.
I don't think it's very liberal. They voted.
We'll
they
find
voted
out.
71% Republican in 18, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
told. I thought they were a little bit more liberal. Maybe they're a little bit more than
everything's
here.
more liberal than here in terms of just voting stats. So.
Yeah.
So, what, do you have any game plans? Is there anything you can reveal, or what are you going to go do next?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I can't go too deep with the strategy. You never know who's
listening.
Who could be taking notes out there. But
Well, I throw mine out there. I don't even care because
Yeah.
I know people are going to steal it anyway. So
Well, I don't know if you've seen that, Daren. Everybody's like promoting the Constitution now. So, like, it's like a nit.
it's in fashion.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, in 2016 we pushed real hard for a Citizens Advisory Council, which is nothing more than an oversight for
Sure.
the people to
Internal affairs.
Yeah, internal affairs for the people to actually see their department and have complete and total transparency. And everybody on the county board was completely against it. But this last county meeting, the chairman of the board was touting it as it was his idea, and they wanted to start one.
So give us something.
So go ahead, throw that strategy out there, buddy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, and
Ice cream at the park.
there's that's not a bad idea actually. You bring the ice cream. You know, there's 2 counties to hit, which is big geographically for a state rep district. So it's going to be, you know, there's going to have to be some strategies, maybe some meet and greets, something like that.
You're going to have to do a lot of those.
Yeah, and definitely. But you know, like I was saying, I'm willing to put in the work. There's gonna be no TV commercials, billboards. You know, I don't have that kind of funds. It's gonna be all grassroots and people who, you know what I stand for or come to find out what I stand for, and they're like, yeah, that's what we want. You know, we want a government for us that works for us rather than us being loyal subjects to the government.
Do you think
limited government?
Do you think and this is the same question for us too. Do you think our community's ready for that?
I think so, and I think from what I'm seeing, a lot of people are starting to become more
Aware.
more aware. Yeah, there's a lot more outlets. I think the problem is, for the longest time, we had 5 mainstream news outlets, and their story was what you heard. But now, I mean, you can listen to a podcast like this. You can find articles for free or cheap. So you hear a lot more different voices, and it's not just the same old story.
You mean it's making people critically think and have to look and find the truth?
Absolutely. As Jordan B. Peterson said,
That's my favorite guy, by the way.
yeah,
He's my favorite.
the
Absolutely.
lobsters.
Yeah.
I love his accent, but he says that the podcast, the long form broadcast, made us realize human beings are a lot smarter than we think. Because before you get on news, say you're on Fox News, you're on CNN, you might get 30 seconds to speak, so all you're going to have is bumper sticker slogans, right? Because you don't get a chance to go through the nuance of your message.
Yep.
But now with things like this, people can actually understand it, and we're like, wow, we are a lot smarter than we think. So I think that's really cool.
Now, see, I have this argument with John all the time. I'm a big believer that people understand a lot more than what he gives credit for. He said nobody's smarter than a fifth grader. I didn't believe him for a long time, but
Yeah, he's never seen the show because they made a parody of it. That's how we know this is real.
Well,
hear me out, Darren. Tell me,
yeah, now he's got to justify
in
himself.
in junior high. Well, first and foremost, in fifth grade you learn long division, right? Sixth grade you go
Your
into
gazindas?
you go into sixth grade, you learn fractions. Okay. Could you tell me one lesson after fifth grade in junior high and high school?
Well, I was still taking algebra then. Math wasn't necessarily my strong suit.
What I'm not saying one lesson in math. I'm saying, could you honestly tell me one lesson? And if you could, I'd be surprised. But what I'd be more surprised if you could tell me 2, because I have never met a person that could tell me 2 lessons after fifth grade. And what it is that stuff gets, you don't. It's like taking karate in fifth grade. Do you actually know karate because you took it in fifth grade? And that's what it reminds me of.
Okay.
So I think realistically, junior high and high school to me is not that important, if you will. I think you can come out of fifth grade and actually get into the workforce already at that point. I know they used to do it back in the day on the farms.
If it wasn't for NAFTA, you could. But anyway.
Well, I mean, you used to be able to do that in the farms, John. You know that. Your father did that. You know?
My father did. My grandfather only had an eighth grade.
I only got a 10th grade education myself.
Middle school education, and the man was wonderful. I mean, just the things he could do, the things he could quote, the things he could say. But back then, we taught people how to read, how to write, and how to do math.
That's it. That's all you need to know.
But society was different. We held people responsible where we don't today. Personal responsibility is big in education and in being a citizen of this country. For instance, when my grandfather, from the time he learned proper English, was expected to speak proper English. If he went down to the mercantile and they said, that's 3 pennies for that, and he said, I ain't got no money, not only would the store manager berate him for his horrible use of the English language, but the patrons there would too, and his parents would have been absolutely horrified that came out of his mouth, and he would have got a good lecture all the way home in the buckboard about how to use proper English, and you don't say ain't got no. That's what would have happened. So next time he went back to the mercantile, he didn't use those phrases again, right?
Right.
So, and I seen when my daughter, she graduated in 2006. She was in Bailey School up here, and the teacher, she sent home a science paper, and she had a big A at the top of it. But she spelled words in the science paper like W-E-N for when, and all kinds of stuff. So at the parent-teacher conference, I said to the teacher, I said, can you explain this paper to me? And he said, oh, yeah, she got all the science concepts perfect. And I said, okay, but why do I see W-E-N, no red pen around it, no S-P, and W-H-E-N over the top of it? He looks at me, and with a straight face, he says, well, it wasn't a spelling paper. I said, you've got to be kidding me, right? The 4th grade, it's not a spelling paper. I correct my children's language at home, their grammar, because I want them to speak proper. And I pay you about $40,000 a year because I expect you to do those things even in science. I want you to hold them responsible for the lessons that they've learned. This is the only way that children retain and practice
This actually started with the word enumerated, believe it or not. So John was talking enumerated rights.
No,
Or certain-
not enumerated rights. See, you even got to enumerated powers.
Powers. Okay, there you go.
Limited government, enumerated powers.
So I was like, so
we don't have enumerated
we're
rights.
We're sitting in a group setting with like 6, 7 other people here. No, I don't know if it was here. It might have been in another place, but we're around 6, 7 people, and he's talking. And when he's reading word for word what our founding fathers are writing,
which is the only way to learn it.
to the average person, you can get lost in the language. Because they don't know the words, or the average person doesn't know these words.
Why? Because in Big Yellow it doesn't say blam and pow.
That was in the 60s with Batman.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
But no, I mean, like, there's no slang to it. There's no, like, it's not flashy
Yeah,
words.
it's real English.
You're right. Well, that's not what's taught, right? So the average person doesn't know what that word means.
No, that is what's
So
taught. Nobody retains it.
I stopped Rutan in the middle of his session. I said, "Does anybody know what that word means?" Not one person raised their hand. So like that's how this started now, and now I have to tell him like,
I couldn't
listen,
believe nobody understood the word enumerated.
but here they're taking a lesson. Here they're taking a lesson. Nobody wants to stop them because they're embarrassed to say,
Yeah,
"Hey, I don't know what you're saying, dude. Can you like layman it up for me?" They're like, people are scared to do that. I don't know why.
Yeah, sure.
They don't want to feel like an idiot.
But the problem is when you layman it up for people.
I would.
When you layman it up for people, that's enabling people to practice horrible English. I'm sorry, it just is.
I'm not disagreeing, but you're going to have to connect to them one way or another.
Right.
And
But at some point in time, you got to go back to the King's English that you learned and brush up on it.
I'm not disagreeing. Like
point.
John and I, we get frustrated because people are like, "Oh, they feel like they're being talked down to, or they don't feel like they're inadequate to speak, or these people when they get around John, they feel like they're inadequate being around John."
And I never understood that. I didn't feel that I was doing that to anybody. I'm just speaking the King's English.
But sometimes they got to get in the damn boat and help paddle too, right?
Sure.
And that's sometimes we get frustrated with that as well. And like, well, get in the boat and help us paddle. So that's
it's like when I don't know if you guys remember, but I know some years ago they talked about they were going to write a Bible in Ebonics. I was like, okay, right.
We need to write the Constitution in
No,
Ebonics.
I refuse. I will not.
What do you think, Daren?
No comment.
You don't want an Ebonics Constitution?
No.
The English is the English, and we need to study it in the words that our founders wrote it in.
So, state rep. What are the duties of the state rep? Do you know? You would know, wouldn't you, Daren? You looked into this.
Yeah, certainly, since I'm running for the position. But yeah, I mean, basically to represent our district in the state legislature of Michigan.
What's that even mean? I bet the average person doesn't know what that word means.
Sure.
Why
So
don't you
it's
just
it's our version of Congress. You don't call it that, but it's the legislative branch of the three. We have 3 branches, just like the federal government, and within that, there's going to be 2 chambers. So you have the House of Representatives, that's the lower one, and then the Senate is the higher one.
Who's in the? So you would be in the lower one, is what you're saying?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, and then we got like someone like Mike Shirkey would be in the higher one.
Yep.
Is that right?
He's our state
so
senator.
Eric Voighauser would be
He's
the lower
actually
one.
leader of the Senate right
Yep,
now.
yep.
Yeah.
Majority
And
leader.
Shirkey would be in the higher one. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Because I don't think the average person understands how this works. And then what are your duties as a state rep? Like, what will you be doing?
So it'll be various, resolutions or legislations, the laws that, we have to abide by here in the state of Michigan. So
Are you expecting
As
to
long
get
as they are pursuant thereof.
right, yeah, and I was going to get into that. You jumped me on there, but
Sorry.
yeah, and obviously the first thing when looking at yay or nay is, well, is this constitutional? Is this the proper role of our government? And then
what are you expecting to see?
well, I know you'll see a lot less than this year because they had that whole dispute going on, more, I should say. But all kinds of issues. I mean, I would.
What are the hot topics you think are going to come through?
So constitutional carry is going to be a big one, and I'm sure the events out in Virginia are only going to bring that debate more to the surface.
You've been on the forefront of the Second Amendment sanctuary county issue in Hillsdale. I throw that out there because I don't know if you were going to.
Oh yeah, I guess not because I was on a different
Wavelength
thought process.
there.
Yeah, wavelength.
Sorry,
there you
we
go.
jump around a lot.
Oh,
I don't
no,
know if you
it's cool. I'll
noticed.
keep
We
up,
cut each
so.
other off.
Yeah.
We jump around.
No, it's good. I like
yeah,
it.
just jump in, man.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Aaron Ritter reached out to me, and he asked if I supported the Second Amendment sanctuary movement, and of course I do. I mean, it's sad we even have to make sanctuaries because we shouldn't have to because it's in the United States Constitution. But anyways, so so I'm willing to help, whatever you want. So he got some resolutions for all of the townships, and I believe the city and county too, and was seeing who would help him out with that movement, who would get involved. And I live in Jefferson Township out there, so I took it to our meeting, and they got it the same day as the meeting, so they didn't vote on it, but they put it on the agenda for next month. So I think it's looking promising.
David Stone was talking about Jefferson too, so I think he might try to go out there as
Yeah,
well.
I mean
That'd be great.
that was one of the things. Aaron and I were working on that. Aaron did a great job doing the resolutions. We did a litmus test of the county board, and we didn't feel that we had enough votes there.
Okay.
So we took a page out of Madison and a Republican form of government, and what we decided to do is take it to the townships, because if we can get 2/3 to 3/4 of the townships that will support this and actually be sanctuary townships, that'll give us a little bit more political push to the county.
It makes it more important too, I think, because if you took it to the county, let's say they did vote on it, right? Those townships are going to be like, we don't give a shit. That's the county level stuff,
Well, but the other issues.
So, I got a cop
Go
in
ahead.
Somerset, John. So so that cop might not honor what this county is saying over here. You know what I mean? So I think the township's where the power's at.
And I think that was the right place to take it anyway. We were kind of trying to stay.
We don't think the 5 members on that board would have
No,
voted for
they
that.
and they
Okay.
wouldn't have. But the other thing is, one of the things that I was getting some pushback on some of the townships was they didn't like that. It left a bad taste in their mouth because of the liberals doing the sanctuary cities for illegal
The
immigrants.
word sanctuary
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah, I actually had someone think I was referring to with illegal immigrants, and I had
Absolutely.
to correct myself.
Well, and the thing, when they started doing the sanctuary cities, I had some people. I'm a critical thinker, and that gets me in trouble a lot with people that fall in love with party and personality rather than principle and ideology. And when they were doing that, I said, I don't like that they do that, but they have every ability under the Constitution to do that. And somebody said, well, that you believe in sanctuary cities for illegals. And I said, no, but I do believe in natural law that our founding fathers set the law up on. And a very interesting thing that happened in California, Governor Brown, pushed, and they got California as a sanctuary state for illegal immigration. However, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, a lot of the bigger cities where you've got people that have $7-8 million homes that leave their homes and go to the inner city to work and then go back out to Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, said, no. You might be able to do that in the state, but our local government here, absolutely not, because we see what's going on in LA and we don't want that here.
Sure.
So what happens is natural law has a way of writing itself, and that's why our founding fathers wrote the Constitution and put these internal checks and balances that were natural law checks and balances. In 51, he says, pitting the ambition of the man against the ambition of the man, so that these happen automatically, so that our Constitution wasn't just a parchment barrier to these things.
Well, this is how they're also communities can shame communities into
Absolutely.
doing the right thing here.
And that's what I said, this Second Amendment thing, it doesn't have anything other than it's a political, all it is a political
Parchment
pressure.
paper?
That's
Yeah,
all it is. It's political
that's all
pressure.
it is.
Because the Second Amendment of the Constitution already gives us the right, or protects the right from the rights that God gave us, or that you're born inherent with.
Exactly.
And so we don't really need that document other than to show political force to a governor or a legislature that would say, hey, let's come up with more unconstitutional
Or-
law against guns.
County sheriff.
Absolutely.
See, our county sheriff today, Daren.
Sorry, didn't mean to take all that from...
No, that's
No, our county sheriff today will arrest you for any gun law, period. And that's the sad
Well,
thing.
we just had one last week.
Well, yeah, I know, but like, so Darren, I'm a convicted felon. I can't have a gun. So how do I protect my family in my house when a robber comes in and tries to rape my wife and murder my children?
Yeah, I'd say some kind of knife, bat, or
Call
something like that.
911. Wait for them to help me.
I'd probably do something to start defending myself first.
Yeah, like own a gun.
Yeah.
Well, and this is the sad thing. This is what we put people. We put people in these choices. I seen a young gentleman just the other day had a choice. He had an order signed by a judge that he had to leave on January 1st and go pick up his son in Missouri. But friend of the court had him arrested on the 30th after he'd already been in there because they didn't tell him there was a warrant out for him, and he could have taken care of it then. But when he got bailed out, his bond said that he couldn't leave the state.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so he goes to the courthouse on the 31st, and of course nobody's there. They're all on vacation. They don't care. So when I asked the lawyer, I said, okay, which one should he have followed, right? You got an order from here, an order from here. He goes, it's a crapshoot. He was in trouble either way. Is that really right that our law system should put people in a situation where they're in a catch-22? They're wrong no matter what they do because there's conflicting court orders? This isn't right. We should not be doing this to our people.
Yeah, they shouldn't conflict at all. I wouldn't know what to do either, to be honest with you.
What is going to be your main pushes? I'm assuming gun control or gun rights, I guess, if you will be a main issue for you when you get up there. But what are some other issues?
Yeah, so I'm pro-life. I was at the Michigan March for Life last Wednesday.
Oh, I saw that on your
cool.
Facebook page.
Yeah, thanks. And exactly. And you talk about the natural law and natural rights, and that's why I'm pro-life. Because usually I don't want government intervention into most things, but I think it's not just a mother's choice. It's also the unborn child should have a choice, and the 14th Amendment of our Constitution says no one should be deprived of life, liberty, property without due process of law. Well, someone's got to speak up for the unborn who have committed no crime and have no ability to speak for themselves.
Just as someone who's murdered doesn't have a choice. They don't have a voice unless the prosecuting attorney gives them that voice and prosecutes the person that took their life.
What about any other areas like technology or maybe justice reform? I'm trying to think what are some hot topics?
Friend of the court reform, maybe? Yeah. Friend of the court reform? I just had to throw that out there.
Listen, you're not going to get any women voters. You don't want to even talk about that.
Don't say that. I disagree with you strongly. But, there's a lot of hot topics right now, with the new year.
That 5G thing is a topic.
Oh, yeah, that's huge right now, too.
No, definitely.
I didn't expect that to be as huge as it was
Yeah,
until
I'm
I started
surprised,
researching
too.
it some.
Yeah, the technology stuff's real interesting, and I know the roads are always a hot topic.
Oh, yeah, the road's
And
number one, probably.
Here's a stat I found the other day. Michigan has $1.1 billion in debt just on infrastructure. And, they think they can tax us out of it, and it's just not going to happen. But something needs to be changed with that.
That's horrible.
You know what's weird, John, is I remember watching Alex Jones probably about 12 years ago, and he was saying that
we just lost 50% of our listeners.
Yeah.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, so this is before it got a little erratic, but he had this comprehension form. You can still buy it to this day or get it today in Texas, and they were like billions of dollars in surplus. And so you can go look at their budgets and see how much money they got. All this money out there in surplus, and he said that it's like that in every state. And I was wondering, like, do we really actually have money in surplus in maybe it's in certain areas, maybe, I don't know. I know government can commingle, so
and that's the problem, right? That's the whole problem.
So,
in business, I can't commingle my funds. It's called a felony if you do that. But business gets to do that out of a general fund.
Government gets to do that out of a general fund?
What'd I say?
You said business.
Oh, I meant government.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering how much surplus is it really out there, and what really can be spent on what.
The problem is when we pay money towards something, we expect it's supposed to go there. But we've got these things called legacy costs and unfunded liabilities.
Yeah, right.
So what happens is government spends all this money on unfunded liabilities and all these legacy costs that they create without thinking about it. And then when it comes time to put the money that you pay taxes for towards where it's supposed to go, the bucket's empty. So their idea is, well, we'll just fill it up more by threatening you with your freedom to pay more.
Sure.
I swear they don't take inflation in consideration, even though I hear it when they're doing things.
Well, even on a city level, we get things like, and trust me, I'm not indicting anybody here, but the Mitchell building up here is one. You know, that family gave that building to the city, and the city went, "Oh, look at this great building we've got." Okay, did you think about the maintenance costs of that building? Those are legacy costs that are going to be on that.
And the inflation
Even though
of
you
that.
got something for free, you still have to maintain it now. So where's the money going to come from to maintain that building? And as buildings get older, they cost more to maintain, as we see with the Kiefer and the
You mean our
Dawn.
building?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, when people are voting on this stuff, Darren, they're leaving it to their great grandchildren to pay for it, and they don't realize that. So I was talking with Ruth Brown the other day at her little event, and she was talking about how she got Fayette Street paid for through a grant, and that we need to have city transportation.
Through
And I'm
bounties.
telling her, like, we can't spend ourselves out of debt. And that's what they're thinking we're doing, is spending ourselves out of debt.
Well, I always like that argument of, well, it's free money, it's grant money.
Yeah.
No.
Off the money tree? Or?
Hey,
Yeah, where did that grow?
Albright just said it the other day at the county meeting.
Yeah, he said it's free money. It's a grant. First off, they don't understand that, and then I love this argument. Well, if we don't take it, somebody else will. That's like saying, well, you better sleep with your neighbor's wife, because if you don't, somebody else is going to. So it's all right for me to be immoral because somebody else is going to be. I don't understand that logic.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think it's a catch-22 because, like you're saying, someone will, and I mean, in some ways, it is some of our money that went to it. But yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think the way it's redistributed is right. I'm just playing devil's advocate
Right.
a little bit.
Yeah, I get that too. Where
My whole
we did
thing is
pay into
just say
it.
no.
Right.
I'm
Well,
just,
yeah, if you had
I'm
the
a just say
choice,
no
yeah,
guy.
If you had a choice, it wouldn't be redistributed.
Someone's got to
but
say
Well,
no. Right?
We'd like some of our money back.
Local government is more powerful, and if they did say no, I equate it to parents that allow the children to start making the rules in the house, and the house gets crazy, and you go to them and say, why is your house crazy? Well, the kids are making the rules. Well, why don't you just start making the rules again? Well, I'm waiting for the kids to tell me I can.
Yeah.
All right, well, there's your problem.
So something like, for me, I'm running for county commissioner, and I plan on telling the state no on a lot of things if I got that position. My concern is that the governor's going to come down with the Michigan State Police and arrest me.
That's why you need a constitutional sheriff.
Yeah, so we need a constitutional sheriff, someone like Rutan here, to protect me from something like that happening. Can you what do you think would happen if a commissioner said no to Michigan Works, Darren? What do you think would happen?
Well, I don't know if the governor would send down people to
That's the
arrest
chain of
you.
command, though.
Yeah. But yeah, there'd definitely be consequences. I'm thinking more financially in terms of, again, the money that's kicked back to Hillsdale.
They don't
Or
get
to
the money
county.
unless we send it in, though, right?
Right. So, yeah.
So there's nothing to kick back. We just keep it.
That's right. We keep it, take care of our county like we're supposed to, and whatever's left, we'll send it to them.
Yeah. That's a good question. Do you have any precedent with that? How it's played out, or I'm just curious. Any?
There has been.
I'm sure there's some cases.
Yeah,
out
there
there,
are.
John.
There's little things in history that has happened, but of course, your national media doesn't want you to know that.
Right. Yeah, that's why I don't
And
know.
so it's kept very quiet. And, you know, in 1946, in Athens, Athens, Georgia.
Is
Athens?
this the sheriff one?
Yeah, Athens, Georgia.
There's two of them out there that
Yeah.
I know of now.
Yeah, and there was a county government that had gone awry, and they were using the sheriff as their protection. And some of the people that come back from World War II said, "I don't think so."
Yeah.
And they
pinned him down
with guns took back their government
Wow.
in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah, I think it was Georgia.
Yeah, so it has happened, and it's happened a few times within history, even in United
I just
States.
read another one
But they
recently.
keep it very quiet. They don't want a lot of people to know about that.
Yeah, taking back your government. See, the thing is if state government is out of control, which I believe it is at this point, Darren, I think it's time for the counties to take back control.
But first, you got to get control of the county governments, because the county governments
of
are out
course,
of control.
of course. but I think there's so much overreach. I can't believe how much overreach in each branch of, like, whether it's local township or whether it's county government or whether it's state government, everybody's overreaching. And then everybody's okay. Like, well, not everybody, but obviously, but
You're generalizing, of course.
yeah, I'm generalizing. 75% of the people are okay with this, and this is the norm.
Yeah, I think it just starts with education and
Thank you.
And start from the beginning. It's like, if we're a county, what's in our county documents? If we're state, what's our state constitution? Start with, if it's local, what your charter is there. Start with that. And go from there.
Well,
but just like you said, it starts with education, right?
Sure.
And that's exactly what Madison warned us about in the bounty payments for cod fisheries debates of 1792. He said, if we allow it to go down this rabbit hole that Hamilton wanted it to go down, he said what will happen is they will put schools in every parish and county. They'll pull money from the general treasury to pay teachers to indoctrinate the children to believe that that's the right way to do it. And that's exactly what has happened. They took, right out of the Communist Manifesto, they took that through the John Dewey model of public schools, and they have taught people that this is the right thing. This is why even in our county that's conservative, you've got conservatives that go, well, but we have to steal from the people for this stuff. No.
Well,
we've been educated
we're
into
110, 120 years deep into this, Daren. We're now, I gave you that tough question on Facebook a couple weeks ago, but I know it's not. We can't shift this back overnight.
No, it's not going to happen overnight. It can't.
But isn't it difficult to navigate reality versus constitutionally, like in driving in both lanes and then shifting once in a while back and forth? And do you find that difficult, Daren? You're going to have to do it regardless, but do you find that a struggle with that yourself?
Sorry,
internally?
I'm confusing the exact question.
Okay, so as a state rep,
Yeah.
right? So you already know that all gun laws are unconstitutional.
Yeah.
But there's going to be some gun laws,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So how do you, we're contradicting ourselves here, right?
Well,
so how do we
How do
navigate
you
that?
stay principally true? How do you stay true to your principles
Okay.
and, and not be stripped of all your power in committees?
Because I'm super frustrated with this because it's like I was having this conversation with like Julie Games. So I was telling her that I'd make a bad politician. I say I'd make a bad politician, but what I mean by that is I'd make a bad today's politician because I want to. It's either the Constitution or nothing. So I don't like the idea of shifting lanes.
It's the difference between a politician or a statesman. See, I'd make a great statesman.
There you go.
Politician.
That makes sense. I'm a statesman. So like I can't shift the lane to the reality, which the reality today is we're operating unconstitutionally.
On a lot of issues.
On a lot of different things. So we're going to jump lanes for whatever our hype of the day is.
Yeah, see, I guess the thing, I get what you're getting at, but I also disagree with you on the point of jumping lanes because
Okay.
I won't jump lanes, and that's the thing is there's some things that if they're constitutionally not permissible, they just can't be allowed.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's you don't hear that too often,
Yeah.
Daren. Let's just be real.
A lot of people go, well, I'm a constitutionalist and those are my principles, but in the spirit of cooperation, in the reality of things, you got to know. See,
You're not going to get nothing done. That's what I hear a lot.
Well, and I'm going to get hate mail on this too, but I'm a big one of you can't be a virgin and then sell yourself because once you sold yourself, you're a whore, and then after that, you can't go, oh, I'm a virgin again.
Right.
No, it doesn't work like that. Your principles are your principles, and if you sell them out, you are what you are.
Daren, I don't know at the end of the day, because this is a lifelong experiment for all of us here.
Sure.
I don't know who's right and wrong. I'm so principle-minded that I can't go the other way. I can't go along to get along. I can't go 10 steps forward, 2 steps back to 10 steps forward again. I can't do that myself. And it sounds like that you can't do that either. And I find that quite interesting because I don't know. I honestly don't know many people, 1 or 2 people now that are like that. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how people do it. I think most people do get in with pure intentions, but then they face the reality of it.
That's
and
what I
it's
call it, the reality.
And if I want to get this deal across, then I have to take this, or I have to make some kind of I have to give my constituents something. So I'll sell 10 things to get one, so I can say I got it. But for me, I couldn't sleep at night. if I wasn't following my values, because that's my whole motivation for this.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you got to live with yourself and look yourself in the mirror. Win, lose, or draw, you can at least sleep at night knowing.
Damn,
you
I
know,
was
you
just going
stood
to
by.
use that line too.
Oh, sorry.
Damn, just took it.
He got you.
What I was going to ask you is, what happens if you don't win? I know you're going to win, right? Because that you got to say that, and you got to look at that in full effort. What happens when if you don't win? What if you don't win? Do you have a alternative plan in life? Like, what else are you going to do? You're a real estate agent now, right?
Yeah, correct.
So you're just going to continue being a real estate. You're also an attorney, right?
Correct. Yep.
So what's your plans? I mean, like, what's your goals?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. First off, to answer the first, I am in it to win it, and I do plan to
Of course.
win. But yeah, heaven forbid if I was to lose, I would just keep going. Yeah, and those are my two career paths. I don't have obviously my whole life planned out or anything, but I'll just continue on as a professional, and stay involved in the community. And just because I'm not holding an elected office doesn't mean I can't spread the message that I want to spread. That this is just one way to do it, but there's obviously others, and I'll definitely still be involved supporting causes I care
I was
about.
going to say, because we never met you. So, I mean, do you plan on getting more involved?
Yeah, certainly, and I already know I'm meeting people like you guys and a ton of other people in the community. Maybe now they know who I am, and maybe they'll ask me to do something for them when before they didn't realize who I was or that I cared.
I got bad news for you. Everything was going good till you met us guys.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's a
you did hear the talk? Okay.
no, but be honest with you, Daren. I mean, since we've been doing this, we've seen huge changes in Hillsdale County. We've been doing this quite some time now. Together, we've been doing it approximately 3 years. We've seen leaps and bounds. Now we got about 6 or 7 people running in other positions throughout the whole county that are principle-minded, similar to our values, if you will.
Even if we don't have people that are principle-minded, here's the problem. I gave this little speech here a little bit ago. The problem with Hillsdale County is we don't have a strong Democratic Party. So what happens is it's the equivalent of having the Olympics where the 100-meter dash, you have one person run, right? Without competition, there's nothing to push us faster or harder. So what happens is in Hillsdale County, we have a tendency to accept mediocrity at all costs because there's no reason to run on the track. We can walk and still come in first.
Right.
And so in 2016, we had 15 races countywide, and only 3 of them were contested. And so
I think it was 14, John.
no, it was 15. It was 15. There was 15.
Do you know why I say that? It's because of our Republican Party. You got to have 14. There was 14.
Oh, maybe there was 14.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I sit corrected. If I was standing, I'd stand corrected. But and that's the problem. We don't have any competition, and so I'm in it to win it too for the race I'm running. But I'm not going to be heartbroken if I don't, because every 4 years, if I'm not dead, I'm going to run, regardless. And that's because even if I don't win, the people that I ran against had to run faster.
Wow.
And
That's a great way to look at it.
That's golden in and of itself. And so, I don't need the job to feed myself. I know how to feed me. I don't need the people to feed me. So the way I look at it is, I'm in it to win it. But if I don't, that doesn't mean I'm going away.
Right.
I'll be in it to win it 4 years from now again. Because just the fact of bringing competition to the field makes everybody play harder.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, Doug Ingalls said something similar. He said, "You're always a better community, or you'll be a better community afterwards, whether he wins it or doesn't win it." That's how he views that as well.
Absolutely, it's the spirit of competition. That's what made this country, was the spirit of competition.
Yeah, I agree.
This is what we prize it and everything.
Sure.
But as soon as we get into politics, all of a sudden we don't prize it anymore.
But, yes,
I don't understand.
But so from 3 years ago, which, be honest with you, was very little freedom fighters out there, liberty fighters. We got
Well, I think there was quite a few. It's just
we
it
got
was,
scorns of them now.
well,
Online.
but it was tough. I mean, I remember what it was like in 2012. You come up and say the Constitution, all of a sudden you were one of those guys.
Yeah, the sovereign citizen.
You're a so you're a sovereign citizen. No, I don't believe in the Articles of Confederation. I believe in the Constitution. So no. It was tough. I mean, you got marginalized. You got hit with titles.
They can't. They can't even marginalize this anymore.
Yeah.
Now have you noticed that?
Yeah,
this
you walk
year?
into the coffee shop. You got to sit in the back, and
Yeah,
and just all that stuff.
Have you been marginalized yet?
No,
No.
not that I know of.
Yeah. See.
you got a nice experience. Coming.
Yeah. See. Mark Twain wrote about this, and you know the quote a little bit probably better than I do, John, about the Patriot Man.
Oh yeah. You know, I just did a class the first of the year on with the Winter Patriot, and it wasn't Mark Twain. It was actually
I'm talking about the scorn feared.
Okay, yeah, that's a quote, but he took that from Patrick Henry. That wrote it. It's easy. I'm going to paraphrase here, of course. That it's easy to be the sunshine patriot when everything's good. It's great to say you're a patriot, but when the bullets start flying and the winter sets in, all the sunshine patriots go home, and only the wintertime patriots are there to fight the fight.
Yeah, Mark Twain has a similar quote. It's a patriot. It's a scorned, feared, hated man until the revolution happens, and it takes nothing to be a patriot. And I'm not saying that's
after
you, Darren.
the revolution.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's you, Darren. I'm saying like in 3 years that I've seen, the revolution's getting bigger. Like the patriots are coming out.
Well, we are in a revolution, and that's all what this series is that I'm teaching on Tuesday nights, is that 700 years of history leading up to the Constitution, the 5 genealogical documents. If we look at the true history that we've gone through that taught our founding fathers how to make this absolute brilliant, genius document, we see these times of great patriotism, and then the people get lazy, and it drops down into these valleys of great despotism, and then it rises. Thomas Jefferson talked about that some, in which he said, the people are more disposed to suffer evils, and while the evils are sufferable, rather than right themselves in their situation. That's natural law. That's the human condition. That's self-evident truth. We are going to go through these cycles where we have great times of patriotism, and then we're going to have those great valleys.
It's kind of like music. Sometimes, like music goes every 20, 30 years where there's a great music.
We're seeing this rise in our time. Thank God.
In Hillsdale,
we're seeing this rise. No, across America, we're seeing this rise.
I don't know about the cities.
To patriotism. They're little tiny specks. I'm talking the nation as a whole. I mean, Virginia was a great. 22,000 people showed up.
Yeah.
22,000. That wasn't just a little demonstration.
Just a couple counties sparked that too.
Right.
That's,
and I think
that's crazy.
And I think that's because of the spread of communication and information. More people are waking up.
More social media.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you share something on Facebook enough, maybe someone reads it, and maybe they get a few seeds planted.
Well, the other thing is, I think I get people all the time, well, which news station do you listen to get your news? And I go, BBC. They don't have a horse in the race. So it's usually a little bit more true. But really, my news source comes from...
You listen to InfoWars.
I get my tin foil hat on and off we go. No, I listen to a lot of different news. And I listen to the left, and I listen to the right, and I listen to the middle. And people always say, well, how come you listen to that? I demonstrate it with, and people that are listening can't see it. I wish we had a visual show. Don't understand this joke, but the joke goes, did you hear about the one-armed fisherman? He caught a fish this big. And everybody laughs at that, but the reality of it is you don't know the middle unless you know the far left and the far right. If you don't know what the boundaries are, you can't find the middle. And so everybody that's living by one boundary or living with blinders on have absolutely no clue where they fit in the field.
Lance Leshway talks about that too. It's almost like a spectrum. Like where Democrats, Republicans are more centered. You got liberals to the left. You got conservative to the right, and then you get your extremes on each side. And I'm conservative myself, so I'm actually more conservative than your average Republican. And that's
which is odd coming from Detroit,
right? I mean, well, I'm just saying, like, that's what I see in our community is the average Republican, And
Well, the other thing is, I see the problem is words have meanings, and we don't practice that anymore, right? And we see that a lot. And this is part of my problem with not using the King's English. Learn the King's English
right,
and use it.
and I'm guilty.
Because words have meanings. And the problem is and this is a John Dewey thing, if you think about it like this, if you have a child when they're born, you've got a dog in the house, but you call the dog a cat. And that child grows up thinking that dog is actually a cat.
Sure.
When they hit kindergarten, think of how they feel when they're made fun of and the teacher goes, no, that's a dog. Well, they learn how to say that it's a dog, and they go along with it just because it's socially acceptable. But to their very core, they don't feel right calling that a dog because of the way they grew up calling it a cat. This is exactly what happens. And we've got words that we use today like conservatism and republicanism and liberalism and progressive. And there's so many people that don't know what those words actually truly mean, and they're used over a large spectrum rather than the specific of what it was intended to be. And that's tough for people like me that know that words have meanings.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I know there's people that thinks the word Republican and conservative means the same thing.
Right,
one's a party, the other's an ideology, and also what a small R Republican is. I mean, that's out of the question.
Well, that's right. And I get that when I first start teaching classes. I get people coming in and I talk about Madison set up a Republican form of government. They go, "Oh, you're one of them right-wing guys." No, words have meanings. It comes from the word republic.
Did you learn a lot of this at Hillsdale College?
No, I mean, I only went there for a year and a half. I did get some of my kind of introductions to, like the Articles of Confederation, some of the less mainstream, more values in the founding. But really all of this was just kind of on my own personal journey, because when I was that young, I wasn't really that politically minded.
Punch it.
Oh, I thought you were showing me your ring there.
No,
Thanks.
punch it.
Yeah, because, in law school, you learn constitutional law, which was exciting till you realize it has nothing to do with
the Constitution.
I was
It's
curious
all just
about
judging.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was curious about that, Daren. As
you.
far as what you learned in law school, what did you learn there?
Yeah, sure. And so, I mean, I assume you're referring to more Constitution. Not
Yeah.
all
I don't care about anything else.
Okay. You want to hear about my seminars?
Yeah.
But so yeah. So
What law school did you go to?
Indiana University.
Okay.
Yeah, he
yeah,
said that
that's-
right at
that
the
was a
beginning if you were
Bloomington.
paying
It
attention.
was a while ago.
Yeah.
Right?
He's got
sorry.
short term. He's short term.
Got Hills there.
Cool. Yeah. So
It's been a long time since I've been there. I was in there in '99.
Okay, Darren's talking now. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Daren.
Okay.
Well, thank you. But so basically, constitutional law, all it is reading court cases. So they use the case method, and you learn about the decisions, but you only learn what their opinion was, and you don't actually know how it relates, or if it most of the time it actually doesn't, to the actual document.
Well, here's a little theory that I learned, and that is the Constitution is a contract, and that contract created a product, and that product was three branches of government that contract created, but the three branches of government weren't a party to the contract. They were a product of the contract. But yet we believe in America that part of the product gets to dictate the terms and conditions of the contract, where in contract law, nowhere else ever is that acceptable.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we hear social contract a lot.
Yeah. And just, back going from there.
No, what I was talking about is we get this, well, the Supreme Court said, that's 1/3 of the branch. That's 1/3
that might have
of the
been
government.
5 people. I mean, 5 people get to write a law for an entire country. That's pretty wild. But yeah, I just, from going from there, some of these, the more you get into it, you see some of these opinions, and then they just pulled a right out of thin air. That, I mean, you talk about substantive due process.
Yeah.
You go from there, then I kind of go back to my roots and say, where do these come from? And that's when you start reading about the actual founders, their views, what led up to the signing, and then really what's really interesting, the constitutional conventions and the first few presidents who were founders and what their views were. Back then they only vetoed a law if they deemed it unconstitutional. It was nothing partisan. So it's just kind of fascinating to see those views. because they're so different from.
Yeah. And I mean, and a lot of people don't even understand in 1803 what John Marshall was quoting in the Constitution, but he actually was quoting the Constitution when he said, you know, anything that's repugnant to the Constitution is null and void at its inception. He was actually quoting Article 6, Section 1, Clause 2, the end of it, where it says anything that's anything that's contrary in the Constitution or laws of the states are notwithstanding. So it means it has no legal footing
Right.
if it's not in pursuance thereof the federal Constitution. So this makes it hard for people who take an oath to the Constitution to, when I was running for sheriff in 2016, I had somebody say, well, you can't pick and choose what laws you're going to follow. You got to follow them all. And I said, no, I take an oath to the Constitution. So anything that is to the contrary in the Constitution of the states or the state laws is notwithstanding. I have no obligation to that unless it falls under the 10th Amendment and it doesn't violate the Constitution in any way.
Well, Daren, I plan on having Adam on the show too, and hopefully Andrew can get on too. I hope you don't hate us when we do that.
No, I
try to
have everyone on. I mean, it's a news source, right?
I think it's great that our county can have. Well, it kind of sucks because you guys got to be splitting votes and stuff like that, but we got 3 conservatives that are running.
Competition is always good.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned, I wanted to just mention this quickly, is you mentioned the idea of being a constitutional attorney. What is that?
You know, and this will be far down the road, but just basically someone who fights for the rights of the people. You know, constitutional law, as it currently stands, is obviously very complicated with all the opinions, how laws could conflict or not. So, but it's just something I'm really passionate about, so I'd like to be involved with that.
That's I've never heard anybody say it. That's
I
why
like that.
Oh.
I just thought it was quite interesting. You're the first person that I've met that said they want to fight for people's constitutional rights. I mean, I've seen People versus Larry Flint, you know, where you got Edward Norton playing that role, but I just
This guy, he relates everything to a movie.
I relate everything to pop culture.
Yeah.
You know, I'm general.
How about Minority Report Tom Cruise with the red flag laws?
Yeah, exactly.
he's always-
we bring up Minority
Yeah.
Report.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Thought
Well,
crime
And
is
then red pilled, obviously,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Matrix.
Thought crime is brought up a lot.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
like
well, anything 1984, I feel like we've talked about like 10 things just
Yeah.
in this that
Yeah.
can be related to that.
Well, see, I don't
Orwellian.
equate
Yeah.
things to movies because I don't watch them. But
Yeah, John
he's
doesn't.
always,
John doesn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I have to. I relate everything to pop culture. I'm glad I got someone on here that knows that. Thanks, Daren. So how do people get a hold of you? Because we're coming up to the end of the show here, and I really want people to know how they can reach you.
Yeah, so they can reach me at choosewisely.org. That's my website, and it's Wisely is Wiseley. I'm on Facebook, Daren Wiseley for state rep.
And pretty much the people that listen to our show are the local audience here. So
they'll
catch you
I
on
love your
Facebook pretty
.org and the play on the name. Very good.
Oh, thank you.
Kudos. Very good.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. God bless. Have a great night.
Hey,
Read
thanks
your
for having me on.
And read your constitutions.